Hello, I'm Ellie Witter from the Miami University Alumni Association, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual Alumni Weekend, connecting Miamians all across the country and celebrating you, our alumni. Thank you for joining us this morning, and I hope you enjoy all the sessions we have today. I would now like to welcome the Executive Director of the Miami University Alumni Association, Kim Tavares, as your host of this morning's session. I'll take it over to you, Kim.
Thanks so much, Ellie. Good morning, everybody. As Ellie said, I am Kim Tavares. I'm the Executive Director of the Alumni Association. And welcome to this morning's session for Alumni Weekend called A Spotlight on the Miami University John E. Dolibois European Center. Just a few notes before we get started. You can navigate the full schedule by clicking on the upcoming events button under your video, and you can join the programs while they're in progress this weekend. And if you can't make it to all of them, the sessions will be recorded and posted online. So joining me today are Assistant Provost Cheryl Young and the new Miami University Dolibois European Center Executive Director, Raymond Menes. And this is a presentation today about what's new with MUDEC. But first, let me do a quick bio for each of our presenters today. Dr. Cheryl Young holds many degrees from Miami University and leads the Global Initiatives team in support of comprehensive internationalization at Miami University, with a focus on sustaining and expanding student mobility, international partnerships, faculty global-focused efforts, and diverse co-curricular programming. Units reporting to global initiatives include the International Student and Scholar Services, Education Abroad, the Center for American and World Cultures, and Continuing Education. And Dr. Young also oversees the e-learning Miami office on the Oxford campus. Raymond Menes is the Executive Director of Miami University's John E. Dolibois European Center in Luxembourg. In charge of the administration of the center since August of 2002, Menes now takes the lead of a wonderful team devoted to the development and implementation of strategic planning based on diversity as a core value and sustaining an inclusive and equitable working and learning environment. Academic rigor and a valuable European experience for all students are key to study abroad experience, aiming for a global perspective. So Cheryl and Raymond, thank you both for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Cheryl is in Oxford, Raymond is in Luxembourg, where we hear that the weather is sunny and beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
As I said, not so much here today. So as always, we wish we were with you in Luxembourg, but really today, I think so when you consider our weather and our cicada problem. So we will get started and we will, I'm going to kick it off to the two of you here to get us going. But viewers, remember that if you have any questions or comments, you can submit them during the live session by clicking Ask a Question below.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to be here today, and good afternoon to Raymond and people in other time zones. It's really been a year of pivots, twists, but also strategic updates for the Miami University campus in Luxembourg. As Kim said, we're excited to announce that we've appointed Raymond Menes to the position of Executive Director at MUDEC. As we navigated the pandemic this year at MUDEC and learned what it meant for our campus in Luxembourg, we leaned on Raymond to steer the ship in the direction of a safe and healthy reopening of the campus under the strict Luxembourgish guidelines. What we found in Raymond was a steady helmsman, a professional who led the staff and program through a steady course, even during a pandemic. In particular, we value his collaborative nature, his ability to communicate across barriers, including an ocean, his innovative ideas, and his strong leadership abilities. Raymond is the right leader for MUDEC at this time, as we're committed to ensuring this established program remains relevant and welcoming for our students as well as our faculty and staff for the next 50 or more years. So Raymond has been with Miami University Center in Luxembourg for quite some time. He most recently held the position of Associate Director, and we've now filled that position also. Stephanie Shaheen, Miami grad, has accepted our offer and will join us in the fall in that position. Many of you may know Dr. Shaheen. She is a Miami alum, and she served as the MUDEC Student Activities Coordinator at one time. More recently, she's been teaching for us at MUDEC, even as she held a position at the U.S. Embassy in Luxembourg. She'll be responsible for the leadership and management of the MUDEC student services. She'll support our curriculum and assessment efforts, and continue to teach one of our courses. So we welcome Stephanie, or welcome back into the fold at MUDEC. And finally, a student coordinator joined us in February. Daniel Riker came to us after earning a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in professional French studies and international studies. Daniel jumped feet first into the fire of COVID during the second week of the spring semester as he supported students with their travel plans and developing programming for students during a pandemic. This is not an easy job by any means, but he has been a welcome addition to the MUDEC staff, and we're all enjoying working with Daniel and his expertise in all things Europe. So those are our staffing updates, and really excited to have this full staff on board as we launch into the next phase of development at MUDEC. So I'll ask Raymond now to tell us a little bit more about how we were able to open up for study abroad in the past year. Many universities weren't able to do that, and how we adapted to the challenges presented by COVID and a pandemic. Raymond?
Yes, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon, and I'm continuing to be very happy to be with Miami and be here at MUDEC. As Cheryl mentioned, I am here for nearly 20 years, but taking over now the main office here, what we call our Oval Office here at MUDEC. It's really a pleasure to be here. And thank you for your kind words, Cheryl. It's always refreshing and rewarding to hear these appreciations. So yes, it was very interesting. We look back to a very interesting year. And I think my key word, and that's why I would like to start with that, is I think what we all learned, and especially our students in the past year, was flexibility. I think that's really the key of everything. We really had to learn, all of us, to be flexible. And it was also mentioned in the beginning, you can imagine that me alone would not have been able to do all that. So I can only also use this beginning to thank all the staff that have not been mentioned now, because they are here for quite a while, but they all did a great job. So you can imagine that since March last year until basically end of August, it was very uncertain. We didn't know what was going to happen, how things were going to happen. We were all working from home, so the chateau was pretty closed. There was basically no one here. We all worked from home, but we learned to use Zoom and WebEx and all these tools that existed, but that we never really used. Faculty continued to finish their classes because the students had to go back on the 13th of March and continued their classes remotely immediately the following Monday. And so we could really end our semester regularly, but we were sitting basically at home thinking, okay, what is coming next? And of course, we had basically three unknowns. The first unknown, the biggest unknown, was what are the students going to do? Are the students going to come? We had a relatively good group of students registered and interested, but we saw day by day the drops because nobody really wanted to take the risk. So at the end, there was a solid group that remained on our list. So that was the first unknown. The second unknown was, of course, the university. As Cheryl mentioned in the beginning, all the universities, including Miami, with all the other programs, all the programs were closed one after the others. So the question was, is Miami going to uphold our program? Are they going to allow us to have students, if at all possible? And what is the risk behind? And then, of course, the third unknown was, well, we all know that there is still an existing travel ban to this point. So what are the possibilities that we have to get our students? So basically, we had to work on these three items. And finally, we could solidify a group of all in all 29 students who said, despite all, we want to come. It's our own semester. So if ever possible, we want to do it. So throughout these months, we were thinking, about what we could do. So the first decision the first proposal that we made was to shorten the semester in a way that we would respect the required 90 days. As you know, if you stay longer in Europe than the 90 days, you need to have a residence permit up to end of 2020, and that entails a lot of paperwork. And we did not want to do that paperwork not knowing if it was at all possible. So we said we reduce the program, we try to arrange the courses so that we can finish for Thanksgiving. And ultimately, the university did exactly the same thing back in Oxford at the end. So that was the first decision that we took, and together with Cheryl and her team, Ryan Dye, Carrie Strader, we worked on a new calendar, we worked on a new schedule, respecting all the rules and regulations that we have to monitor the courses. So that was really a big part of the job. And then, of course, again, thanks to Cheryl and Ryan, they convinced the administration that, if possible, Miami would hold the program up and really try to get the students over. And then it was, of course, the challenge to convince the Luxembourg authorities to allow students over. And so basically the Luxembourg Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, well, we adjust to the European Union regulation, and the European Union has an open door to education. So they said, if we get over students and related faculty, we can make an exception. We can write you a letter to the embassy, and from there you will be allowed to come over. And so that's how slowly over the months we got our okay, we got our green lights, and we were ready to receive these students. But then of course came the next challenge. So when we started to work in person again at the chateau here, the first thing that we did was, I called it our guided tours. So we did guided tours with all the staff members one by one, saying, okay, looking at now the regulations that are in place here in Luxembourg, what do we need to pay attention on at the chateau? So for example, the chateau, for those who know the picture of the chateau, we make, and it is still like that, we make the chateau one way. So you enter one door and then you continue to cross the chateau, but you do not go back to where you come from, so that the relatively narrow corridors do not allow to meet each other and to cross each other. Another big issue was, of course, the kitchen. How are we going to serve food? So we had to reduce not only the grand hall where we eat, but also the classroom. So we had to respect the distances. It was relatively easy with the first 29 students, because that was relatively small classes. I think the biggest class at that time was 11. So transforming a class where you normally fit 35 to 11 was no problem. The same in the grand hall. We made tables of 4. Students had to go to the entrance hall one by one, and from there pick up their food again one by one. So all these regulations were put in place, and the students respected them. So when they arrived, they really did a very great job. We briefed them, we explained them what we expected to them. Masks were always compulsory during, let's say, during their walks through the chateau. In the beginning, because when they arrived in summer, numbers were relatively low. It was relatively relaxed at that moment, so that masks were not required during class time when everybody was sitting on the chairs. But then slowly the situation deteriorated. So of course, we had planned a lot of things. Museum visits, for example, here in Luxembourg, they were limited. So we did our orientation as we regularly do it, but with reduced numbers. So we could not travel with the entire group on one bus, but we had to adapt. So we ordered 4 buses instead of 1. And instead of organizing 1 tour, we organized 8 tours to respect always this limit. So it was a whole planning challenge that we had to do, but it went really smoothly. Students could travel, especially in the beginning of the semester, There were still relatively good possibilities, and then slowly during the second part of the semester, it started to close down again a little bit. But that was a time already when we were able to finish our program as we had scheduled it early. A challenge was, of course, our study tour. We absolutely wanted to keep up with the study tours, but we had to change. We had to change our destinations. Initially, we had wanted to go to Poland, to Slovenia, but that didn't work out. So finally, we could manage to go to France and to Germany, and of course, change the content of our tours. And then we slowly came to the end of the semester. So mid-November, we were all done, and we started to look at our second semester, because our second semester, so the spring semester 21, was very promising, and everybody was thinking that numbers would be better again, and then things would be get better quickly. And we had a group of 69 students, so basically more than double the size than before, which meant that we had again to have a look at our arrangements. A big change that we could operate for this spring semester was that our students are not having to go through the process of a residence permit anymore, but the new process now is that everything is done in advance, and like European students going to the US, they have a student visa now. This is a process that we had started quite a while ago with letters going to the Ministry of Health, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and all kinds of people, but it never really moved. And basically the ultimate help we got to get the things really moving was the latest US ambassador who was here, Ambassador Evans, because at one time at the reception, he looked at me and he said, "Well, what can I do for you?" Well, I said, "You can get us the student visa." And he said, "I promise you, you'll get it." And we got it. So before he left, it is in place. And now we have, for the first time, we had our spring cohort with student visas. And that made life easier, because then we did not have to plan ahead of time to shorten the program or not, because we simply have the validation of the student visa until mid-July. And regardless whether they leave early or not, there is nothing that we need to do, so it makes life much, much easier. But of course, we had again to increase measures, because our classrooms did not increase, but our number of students increased. So we had to make sure that all the distance measures were respected, and also the grand hall became smaller because we had more students. But we kept exactly the same rules and regulations. So that at the end of the semester, we had a total of, among the 69 students, we had a total of 9 students who were tested positive, but none of them had really serious symptoms. So lucky us, we never were in a situation where we were afraid that somebody would really be bad or really get serious problems with this. And again, everybody thought that things are getting better, but they did not. So the situation continues. And of course, then students become more and more nervous, because they thought that towards the end of the semester, when the weather is getting better, and that was what basically everybody promised them, they would be able to travel more. But it was not the case. So we pushed back our study tour because we did not really want to do what we had planned again in France and Germany. But even there, the numbers were very bad at the time. So we were looking at a different date of first. And then at the second stage, we said, okay, even though we pushed it back, it's still not feasible. What can we do? And then we came up with the idea that in Croatia, numbers were, especially at that time, much, much better already. The weather had already been better. And then we said, well, if we could organize the tour in a way that everybody could go, then we could also look into basically booking a hotel and just be on the safe side. And then we would have to look into the travels. And so basically what we did was, I had a discussion with the local air company, Luxembourg. And I said, well, what if we charter a flight so that you bring us to Croatia and back? And that was no problem for them because we have small machines, maximum 76 passengers. We were 64, so we could manage it relatively easy. And so therefore, we did our study tour to Croatia, and it was really a great success, to the point that faculty, Elena and Juan Carlos Albaran, they decided to repeat a similar, not the same, but a similar tour to Croatia next week, or in 2 weeks' time, when they do their summer program study tour. So basically, they disregarded from their initial plans, and they said, no, we are going to repeat that because it was just gorgeous. It was very educational. We had a lot of contacts with locals, talking about especially the ex-Yugoslavia, the wars that took place there in '95. So there were a lot of potentials for them, and so they decided to repeat it. Now summer is coming to an end very slowly. We are a little bit more than halfway through. We have a group of 25 students plus 4 students who are interning, and a very good group, very quiet, very nice, very studious. They have 3 courses of 3 credits, so 9 credits to do in 7 weeks. Very challenging program. Faculty really challenging them, inviting a lot of guest speakers. So we have really very nice contacts now. Things are opening up in Luxembourg, so that right now a lot of students are either in France or in Italy traveling this weekend. Luxembourg has been downgraded now to orange, which means that traveling is opening. As of next Sunday, we will have the European COVID check. So if you are tested negative, if you are vaccinated, at that moment you can travel freely. So that's really good for our students. So for example, there will be no more problem if things stay what they are, of course. But if there is no more problem, our students can get back to the US without having to go to the test mode with the Netherlands. Because if you now travel to the Netherlands, there is no more test required. So things are really opening up, and we are very positive that we will get a great semester, and we really look forward into preparations now to have our 106 students that we expect to come in fall. So that's really going to be exciting, and I hope that by then we have not to take care of any measures. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you about this past year, with one thing that I wanted to add, and that is maybe a good transition to a later topic, because for the first time we have students not living in host families, but also living now in student apartments.
I mean, seriously, Cheryl and Raymond, amazing what you guys have done in terms of just a pandemic, a global pandemic, working, as you said, across different time zones. We saw the mileage between Differdange and Oxford there in the previous slide. Just congratulations to you both, seriously, for just continuing this program, really being innovative and continuing to move it forward with new staff and new programs and new ideas. We had a comment come in while you were speaking from an alum from the 7172 program. And she just said that it was a life-changing experience, and she just thanks you so much for your dedication to keep this wonderful program going. So I think we all agree with that there. So, I feel almost guilty, Cheryl, being like, well, what's next? Because you guys have done so much now. But I think it's really just the beginning of what exciting plans are ahead. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk to us about that.
Thanks, Kim. Our priorities for the upcoming few years haven't really changed much. Our priority is always planning for the student experience. But we're really honing in. We've a result of a program review, looking closely at enrollment planning, and most importantly, the feedback from our students and our alumni. We always want to hear from our alumni, and this is a great comment from an alumni recognizing that experience going back 50 years or more. Looking at all of this, we knew we had to do a deeper dive and to review our curriculum as well as housing options for students. So these are where we're really focusing in the next few years, and right now and in the past year. So with these priorities, we wanted to make sure that we are well aligned with the Miami University priorities, including diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as communication between and among various programs and staffs in the US and in Europe. If I could have the next slide. In the past, our curriculum was kind of a one-size-fits-all model, but always focused on the European experiences. Courses were offered that would support students moving forward with the Global Miami Plan, which are general education requirements at Miami. But what we have found is that more and more students are now coming to Miami with most or some of their general education requirements completed through AP credit or other ways, or they were choosing to study abroad later in their academic career and they no longer needed those credit hours. So this seemed to be at the root cause of some of the uneven enrollments. We had a boom and bust semesters, but when we looked at it closely, we found that some students just didn't find the academic courses they needed to move them forward definitively during their semester at MUDEC. And they were choosing programs that did allow them to get those courses. So in consideration of that, we're now offering more courses that are tied to what we're calling cohorts of students. So they're a cohort from a major or a minor or a co-major, something like that. The provost appointed, I believe it was in 2020, Jim Shively, a professor in teacher education, who's also a Miami alum, as the curriculum coordinator to lead this effort over a 2 to 3 year period. So he's worked with several areas closely to strengthen or develop our curriculum. So again, it's very important that everything focuses on Europe and the experience students are having in Luxembourg and beyond during their time there. But we now have these cohorts of students. So we've had architecture and student teaching cohorts for quite some time now, but we're adding kinesiology in the fall, sports leadership and management, known as the SLAM program, in the spring. We're adding a political science cohort. We're working with other areas, the Farmer School of Business, media, journalism, and film, other areas for some future cohorts. Some of these will have faculty from Oxford who are appointed to teach courses at MUDEC for not only the cohort students, but also all of the students at MUDEC. This allows us to also diversify the Miami faculty experience, to allow faculty who might not have otherwise been able to do a MUDEC appointment, they can do that. So just to highlight one of the cohorts, if I could have the next slide, the Digital Innovation Cohort launched in the spring of 2020. Well, that was unfortunate timing when the pandemic hit and we had to evacuate everyone back to the US, but they still launched and got going. With a semester cut short, they were able to finish it. And they did have a successful semester, but they were back this spring again, and they had a very successful semester. They get real world experience with their class credit. So it's modeled on these programs that are also in Cincinnati and San Francisco. So they're in their internships Monday through Thursday. Friday, they get some company visits at the local startups in Luxembourg, a thriving community of startups in Luxembourg, networking with some of our alumni and business leaders there. But they are also able to participate in what's called an ideation camp at the University of Luxembourg. And our Miami students actually this spring were on the winning team under the leadership of Glenn Platt, the director of the Armstrong Institute for Emerging Technology at Miami. So we want to congratulate that group on a successful semester and being on the winning team for this ideation camp. We anticipate that through these cohorts, better meeting student academic needs that'll allow us to maintain a more consistent enrollment, but perhaps more importantly, as we will continue to monitor, assess student needs in order to pivot as needed, bring on new cohorts, and watch the Global Miami Plan redesign that's taking place right now to understand where we can embed study abroad at MUDEC and that opportunity to work with any new majors that come forward and align study abroad and the European experience with those majors. So we're really excited about these updates. and the innovation in our MUDEC curriculum. And so far, we're hearing from students and their parents that they find the curriculum more relevant and connected to their overall Miami experience. Next slide. The second priority was student housing. Homestays have been the only option for our students at MUDEC for the first 52 years, but today we know that students are looking for other options. And when we combine that with the reality that there are fewer families able to host students for various reasons that Raymond can discuss, we knew we had to find other options. What's important to say here is homestays have always been at the core of the Miami and Luxembourg experience, and they will always remain an option. But we had to find other options for students so that we could meet and ensure that our capacity is met, that we are meeting student needs and what students today require. So I spent the fall and semester in Luxembourg with this priority at the top of the agenda, and working with Raymond and his amazing connections in Differdange and Luxembourg, we discovered some potential opportunities. Now Raymond's going to tell us a little bit more about apartments that have now opened for students, as well as a really exciting option that's coming forward in the future. Raymond?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it is true that it is not new that we discuss the possibility of alternative housing for our students. And I also know that it was not accepted right away among, especially the alumni. We discussed it for quite a while with the alumni board, also because they say the host families are really part of the European experience, which is definitely true. And as Cheryl said, we are not going to completely abandon the host families, but there are different reasons. So it's not only that students change their minds and also want to have a different setting. It is also that host families are more and more difficult to be found. We have an older growing population who very often sell their house, go to an apartment where they cannot host any students anymore. And then the house that they sell goes to a younger family that has kids again, and they need the space. So that makes the availability of houses smaller than maybe in past years. Also, the trend of Luxembourg, those who follow a little bit the news on Luxembourg know that housing is really an issue in Luxembourg, and that the market is very, very tight and very, very expensive, so that more and more apartment buildings are built rather than houses. So that also explains. And then we are here in the south of the country, in Differdange, where, and that's definitely an advantage, we have a lot of diversity, but where housing issues are much more difficult to get. Another reason is competition. You know that since 2003, we have the University of Luxembourg, which is growing, which started in the opposite direction. They started with building student housing, but they very rapidly came to their maximum capacity, and now they go the other way around. They look for host family. So we have an indirect competitor with them, because they are also looking in this southern region. And we have LUNEX just next door, with whom we can do certain things in kinesiology and SLAM, as Cheryl mentioned, but they are also a competitor to our housing. And they also wanted to build at one point a dormitory just next to their school, but it was not authorized by the city because it was not in their concept. So looking at all these arguments, it is clear that we have to move and do something different than just the housing. Of course, our housing coordinator, Melia Durakovic, is very, very active, and she has found already now in the recent times new families. So our pools of families is also, it's not growing, but it's at least stabilizing. She has in the last times gone that far up to the Minister of Economy here, who at one point mentioned that he might be interested in taking a student, and she's pushing him behind, so that possibly we have soon one of our students living with the minister. We have it already with the mayor, or at least the former mayor. So we are really working hard in developing this, but we had some opportunities because Differdange is really developing not only in terms of academics, because in the meantime, we have also the international school here. So we have really a lot of educational opportunities, but Differdange is also growing in terms of housing opportunities. And together with locals here, we developed the first project, and you see the house, it's a little bit upside down as far as I see, but this corner house there, which is in the city center of Differdange, basically now belongs to a company with which we work, and they rent it out for us. So basically the second and third floor, and even the fourth floor, you see these little windows on the roof. There are all in all 8 apartments, studios, so where students have their little kitchenette, they have their own bathroom, and then of course their living space with a bedroom. So they are really very central. The house that you see on the edge of the right side, that's the mayor's house. So they are in very, very good company. And for us, it's very good because as soon as something goes wrong in the house, I get a phone call immediately because we are in very good terms with the city, and we would not want to ruin that. So she knows that she should call us up at any moment when something goes wrong in the city. Then we also use the gardener's cottage. Some of you know that in the past we housed faculty there, but I think with what we have available in the chateau, we are able to use also the gardener's cottage for students, and we had a group of 5 students in the house last spring, and again now we have a little group there. They love it because they have common space, so they have their own rooms, but they have to share first floor and second floor. They have to share bathroom, and they have one common space which is their kitchen, but they enjoy it. So as long as the group is good, it's really a very nice experience for them. I just tell you this little story which I loved. There was a group of 5 girls living in the apartment, and one day I drove out of the parking with my car, and I looked at them, and they just came out of the house. They had all their little bag, their Miami little bag in their arms, closing the house and going to Cactus to shop, to do their shopping for the next days. And that was a very nice, say, okay, they have arrived in Luxembourg, they are here. So it is also maybe a different, but it is also a way of experiencing Europe, of experiencing Luxembourg. They have to go to do their shopping at Cactus. They have to deal with the languages because not everybody speaks English, or at least good English. So they have to deal with it. And that's also a great opportunity for them. So it was really a very nice experience. We left a few rooms. I did not mention that in my first intervention, but we left some of the spaces available over the last year because we also used it as a COVID isolation place. So we had quite a few, as I mentioned, we had 9 students who were at one point positive, and of course they had to isolate. And so we used parts of these flats and also parts of our studios upstairs to isolate the students and prevent them from spreading it to the others. So looking at these relatively successful first attempts, we were approached by the city about the possibility, because for those of you who know Differdange a little bit, you certainly know where Auchan is, on the former grounds of Arbed, of now Mittal, and they had made a deal with the city to build a new living space, a living area in that region. And so they have now constructed the Auchan area, and behind they have already now redone and rebuilt the international school, where you have now more or less 600 students every year. And in the middle of those 2 projects, they are now in the process of building a new complex of basically 3 big buildings. So the high tower that you see in the picture is going to be basically, that's going to be the entrance of Differdange. That's going to be a 24-floor building with apartments. So these apartments belong to the city. The city bought all the apartments, and they will resell them at a relatively interesting price to young family or elder people. So again, what they really want to achieve in that whole space is diversity. So diversity not only internationally with nationalities, because that's really a non-issue in Luxembourg with 102, I think, different nationalities just alone in Differdange. So that's really not an issue. But the issue here is that they want to really also mix young and older people, active people, retired people, students, and all kinds of people in that area. Behind that building is a little building that you barely see. That's going to be office space. So there is going to be a little shopping mall downstairs, and there are going to be offices in that space. And then on the right side, the little building that you see in the back, that's going to be again a mixed development where they want to sell studios again to people. Also a kind of apart hotel that they might do with a couple of one of the wings. And then basically now we got proposed and we accepted to have on this building 2 floors with 50 students, not students, but studios, 4 students. So that's going to be 50 flats where they are going to have their own bars, all pretty new, as you see. It's under construction right now, and with a common kitchen. So the idea is to have on one floor 25 studios, and for them a huge, big common flat area. And that would be in between. When you see these 2 buildings, and in between there is a kind of window glass passage, and that would be then the common space for this floor, and that would be built on 2 floors. And then downstairs, next to the shopping area, there will be one group space for all the inhabitants where they could also meet and sit down and maybe with a little open bar or something like that. So it's really going to be a really very nice project. And it was announced not later than yesterday, because suddenly I heard it from my mother-in-law, 92 years, sitting in her retirement home, and telling me, well, are you building, why are you buying apartments? We said, no. Oh, I read that in the Tageblatt, which is the local newspaper. So it was yesterday in the newspaper because the city hall has accepted the project. So it's basically just an acceptance of the project. But of course, the city hall is very proud to announce it. And we are happy to see this happen. So it happens in collaboration, of course, with Miami University. Basically, they need to say yes to it, with locals who need to sponsor it, and especially also the city of Differdange, who is really the promoter of the project, and last but not least, the government. Because the most interesting part, and that is where Miami really makes a huge deal, is that the entire cost of the building is covered by 75% by the Luxembourg government. So basically, the Luxembourg government is paying 75% of 50 flats devoted to the students of Miami University, which is really an outstanding deal.
I had to unmute myself. That is really exciting. I mean, that is just the progress, that has been made over the course of the program's history. And again, there really is a special relationship between the Luxembourg government and Miami University to make this international experience and this partnership possible. So thank you for giving us the update there on the new opportunities. And I know, so we looked a little future ahead here, so we're looking out a little bit, but there are some really kind of urgent things that, are going to be kind of right now on your radar. And I know you want to talk about those before we get into some questions that we have. So we'll do that, and then we'll open it up to the questions. I've got a few that have come in.
Thank you, Kim. One thing I want to mention is that development that we just showed you and Raymond talked about. We have learned is the street it's on is John E. Dolibois Boulevard. So we really believe this is meant to be. It's very exciting to know that they have named this street for John Dolibois. So what's next at MUDEC, and we're looking at the upcoming semester and year. Curriculum review, as I've talked about, is always going to be our highest priority. We just want to make sure that the curriculum remains relevant, driven by the needs our students identify, even as we ensure that the European experience is rich, interactive, and draws on student curiosity. That's really important to me in particular, that we're drawing on our students' curiosity while supporting their becoming better versions of themselves, global citizens. They're building intercultural, multicultural, and global consciousness. So that's going to be at the top of our minds as we move through the next phase of development at MUDEC. More specifically, the European side has always collaborated with us on many areas. Raymond talked about some of that. But we want to deepen our collaboration with our sister university in Luxembourg, the University of Luxembourg, expand our partnerships with them, continue our partnerships with them. The Transatlantic Dialogue and Luxembourg Peace Prize were last week. That was a very important event. It was a small event this year, but we want to make sure we're continuing with that partnership, as well as what I talked about earlier, the ideation camp and some other connections we have with the University of Luxembourg. Raymond mentioned LUNEX. It's a local international sports university right down the street from us in Luxembourg. Raymond, Jim Shively, and I visited with them last week. Jim has visited them in the past. We see this as a great opportunity for our KNH and SLAM students to take classes with LUNEX students, either with a Miami instructor or a LUNEX instructor, and we're going to pilot that this fall. We're very excited about that opportunity. And then we have our friends at Sacred Heart University. That's an American university, but they have a master's program in business, an MBA program in Luxembourg. And together, the three of us kind of form the academic community in Luxembourg, and we want to cement these relationships not only in Europe, but collaborate with them through partnerships that bring in all of our Miami University faculty, staff, students, administration, cemented in a way that that continues into the future and builds on both sides of the ocean. So those are it's at the top of my mind as we move forward. Raymond can tell you a little bit more about these next 2 bullet points, some work we're doing with the university architect and connecting with others between MUDEC and Oxford.
Yes, indeed. I think the housing issue is going to continue, and we are definitely continuing to look at more opportunities. And also we need to look at the chateau. So right now we are finishing to renovate the last studio upstairs, which is really old and really needed a complete revamp. So really it has to be redone from scratch. That's basically the last apartment that was left in the very old style. But from there we will need to continue for faculty housing also to renovate, modernize the furniture, because things have become rather old. Classrooms will also become a challenge if our program grows, because we still want to see our program grow. But the chateau, even though it's a huge place, but it has only 5 rooms, out of which 3 are relatively large rooms, 2 are very small. And for example, now we have an architecture cohort, and for them, it's relatively difficult. There is a group of 15 working in the studio. So they want to spread out their material. They want to leave their stuff and work continuously. But that is a challenge. So we will need to continue to think about how we can revamp the place. Outside, we have done a lot of efforts. The terrace looks really attractive to the students now. I think we counted this morning, there are now 20 seats outside to have lunch as soon as the weather is good. And last week they were sitting outside all the time. So the chateau surroundings, thanks to one of our very gracious hosts, dads, he's really redoing the garden and all the space around. So that's really something that we would not be able to do without him. So he has done a great job. So There are flowers all over. Everything is clean and nice. The city helps us a lot. So that is definitely something we will continue to work on. Academically, of course, we will continue to develop the program, as Cheryl says. And I think one of our goals, together with Jim, as we discussed it, is that we need to make sure that the European faculty, especially not talking about the US faculty, but the European faculty, that they become part of the entire group of Miami University. So far, they had the impression that they were only depending on the one who was sitting on this chair. But that's not the case. Basically, they belong to a department, which means that they have colleagues, they have a chair, and they have a dean, because they somewhere belong to a school. May it be the School of Business, may it be the School of Education, or any other. And we really want to make sure that all of our European faculty are connected with their chair and with their colleagues, so that they get updated information on what is going on in their department, and that they can also exchange with their professors there what has been adapted, what has been renewed in the program of their class. Because we know that most of classes, not all, but most of the classes are taught also in Oxford. And so why not exchange also ideas and approaches? And sometimes why not simply show off here to show them what we can offer to the students that is probably difficult to offer in Oxford. I just think about the possibilities that an art professor here has with the museums that we have here in Luxembourg, but also in the neighboring cities like Saarbrücken, like Metz, even to Paris if need be, where in Oxford you can only see the things on the screen. Here you can really see them live. And that's really something that we want to develop. Of course, Luxembourg is waking up now. So it's really after 1 year, more than 1 year of COVID, where nothing really took place. We noticed this week that things are waking up, that Luxembourgers, that locals really want to organize events again. Yesterday, I was at the University of Luxembourg. 2 days ago, I was at a vernissage here in Differdange. So really, you notice that things are going up. And Cheryl mentioned that we are going to create a new course with this Lux 101. And I think we really want to emphasize here on the European experience. So we really want the students to be engaged in all kinds of activities, going to a soccer game, to a mandatory concert that they have to go to visit in order to gain this intercultural European experience. And I think that's really something that we want to develop. Thank you.
That's really exciting. Thank you both. Raymond, just kind of building on what you just talked about connecting that Oxford-Luxembourg experience. Someone asked, have you now that Zoom has really come back into, is now the thing and not going to go away, is there any thought of kind of having simultaneous classes or doing anything to connect them in that fashion?
It is certainly a possibility, and it is something that we have discussed before COVID. But as you say, thanks to COVID, we discovered the possibilities of Zoom, right. Zoom and all the others. I think Zoom has now really pushed through. But of course, there are ideas to have classes in common. The hindrance might become the time difference. So that's really something that we will have to face. Right. Because basically, when you get up, we are already past lunch. So that's something where we need to look
earlier. Yeah,
that's difficult, but certainly it's a possibility. And definitely also, we would like to have our faculty participate, for example, in faculty meetings of their department.
Yeah, so that they can still feel connected back. That's really nice. Another question that came in that I don't know if we can answer at this point in time, because I know it's something that U.S. colleges are struggling with. And of course, not only do we have what we have our Miami and United States, but as being guest of Luxembourg, we have to think about what those are too. But what about vaccination requirements going forward? Is that something that students will be required to be vaccinated to come to the program, or are we kind of still waiting to see what those regulations are going to roll out to be?
At
Either
this
one of you, Cheryl.
Yeah, at this time, we're not requiring any students at Miami, I don't believe, to be vaccinated.
Right.
Obviously, we're still in discussions. If we have a group going to a location where it's required in the location, then of course, we will have to require it. Ramon can speak to where they're at in the European Union as far as vaccinations, but we are actually seeing, I can say, most of our students who are applying to the program this summer and into the future, they are vaccinated, most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can confirm, especially now for our summer program, that we have 23 out of 25 being vaccinated. The issue might be that Luxembourg is ready, and I just downloaded it yesterday. I have my European passport now that I am vaccinated. Let's say you have, well, we call it the 3G. Those who speak German, basically it's based on the German being tested, being vaccinated, or having come over a situation. So if you have a certificate of one of these three, you get a green light on this European COVID check app. So basically, since I am vaccinated now, and a lot of people, of course, in Luxembourg are, you have a European certificate in French and in English, and you have an app now available that when you go, for example, in a restaurant, they can check with their app if this is a valid QR code, and you are fine. So as of next Sunday, Mother's Day, for example, you can go to a restaurant, and if you have this COVID certificate, you are good. The issue is that in the US, you don't have QR codes. So last week, I sent a letter to the Minister of Health and the Director of Health here in Luxembourg to ask how we could handle the situation for our students, because I said they are vaccinated, they have a card, it's written CVC, we know how it looks like, but it has no QR code. So I asked for the possibility for them to receive a Luxembourg certificate with a QR code so that it could be controlled as well. I'm still waiting on the answer. Probably I'm not the only one to ask this question, but I'm waiting for the answer. And there was a remark where I said, oops, there was a remark that said, yeah, everybody living in Luxembourg should get this QR code. So it might be that they already work on it, so that possibly our students in summer, once we see their certificates, we would send it in, and they would return us a letter with the QR code. That would be, of course, ideal.
Great. Thank you. Cheryl, I think this question that came in, I'm going to direct a little to you because it's about marketing the program to Miami students. And one of the goals that is listed for the university and for the center is diversity. What efforts are being made? Do you think that the cohort introduction is going to help with diversity? Are we working ways to really appeal to students of color and first-generation students to consider a study abroad experience in Luxembourg?
Absolutely. That's one of our highest priorities in education abroad in general. The program overall is marketed to students as soon as they start hearing about Miami. They hear about Miami and Luxembourg. If you look at our promotion materials through admissions, places like that, it's really the only program that's put in front of potential students. And we know that about 85% of our students come to Miami, say they are going to study abroad while they're at Miami. So we know that they've seen that material about Luxembourg. We're doing a lot of work on diversifying our enrollment in study abroad, and especially at Luxembourg. We're working closely with the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on that, and we have some plans going forward to develop some faculty and staff at Miami who are going to be our allies and champions for the MUDEC program. The MUDEC program is really an affordable option for our students because it's generally the same price point as being in Oxford. So there's a few extra costs, but we have scholarships dedicated to diversity. We're going to be developing these allies and champions for the program. And we've got a lot of things in the works to really diversify education abroad in general at Miami, but specifically at MUDEC. It's one of our highest priorities.
Great, thank you. And we are at the end here, so I'm going to ask you both to maybe give me the elevator speech if an alum came to you and said, "How can I help?" What could our alumni, both those who have attended the center and those who have not, what could you look to our alumni to do to help the program? Raymond, I'll go with you, and then we'll go to Cheryl.
All right. Well, I think money matters. That's for sure. That's one thing. So donations keep on to be welcome. We have a lot of scholarships available for students. So if we speak about first generation students, diversity students, there are certainly needy students that could not afford to come over without having the financial support. That's definitely one thing. Another thing is that I mentioned before that we want to develop the European experience for the students and that they are required to do certain things. And we want to give them a lot of possibilities. And we do not want that access to events is blocked because they would have to pay an entrance fee. So I would like also to use discovery tour availability for them just to pay an entrance fee to whatever event we might be able to get them. But of course, not everything can be free. We have beautiful relationship, for example, with our orchestra Soliste Européen, where we always get up to 40 tickets. But not everything is available for free. So sometimes we need to pay, and I would not want the students to pay for this, as it would be part of their curriculum, if you'd like. So I would like also to have some availability for them to do this.
Great.
But other than that, I think it's always great to see alumni here. So basically, I can only extend a general invitation if you pass through Europe and if you are, I don't know, on a trip to Paris or wherever you go. Luxembourg is not very far, and I think it's always good. Shoot us an email, come and visit us and see us in action. I think that's really the best advocate to just come down, see what we do, and also talk to the students. So it would be great if we could plan in. We have regularly guest lectures on Wednesdays, and it must not always be locals. It could always be one of you to come speak about your experience, maybe in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and then we can compare what it looked like then and what it looks like now. And I think that's really also an asset that everybody can bring.
That's great. Thank you. Cheryl?
Connections matter. Connections and networks matter. And we're always looking for connections for internships in Luxembourg for our students, service learning opportunities. So alumni connections matter. We can also connect with our MUDEC Alumni Board. There's lots of possibilities to serve on the Alumni Board and to be a class captain or something like that to help us with our current campaign, hosting students for meetings before they go to Luxembourg, little receptions that we have across the U.S. for our students who are coming over. So we want your connections and your networks, and we want to use them for our students.
That's great. Thank you. And yes, you do have a very active alumni group. And if you are a member of the MUDEC alumni community and you haven't done anything yet, please reach out to them or reach out to my office, alumni@miamioh.edu. We're happy to connect you and get you involved with the program. Thank you both so much for your time today. I'm going to end with a quick last comment that I got that I could not agree with more. It is from someone from the class of 74 that just said, "It's clear that you two have a great partnership that plays off unique talents and knowledge, and how fortunate we are to have you both leading the campus today." And I did not make that up. I mean, that is right there. That is great. And I couldn't agree more. So thank you both for your vision and for your enthusiasm for this wonderful program. I have been fortunate enough to visit, and I look forward to one in the future. So thank you again so much for your time today. This will be available to view after for anybody you'd like to share this link with. Our next session is the evolution of our campus and its student life with Bob Keller, which will feature a special virtual Hughes Society induction for the classes of 1970 and 1971 as part of our virtual Alumni Weekend. And just remember that there are unique URLs for every session, so please refer to your registration confirmation email to link to the presentation. And on behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, thank you all for joining us today. Love and honor.